All right, so we are finished with Unit 1, and now we're moving on to the next unit, which is the instruction set. So I'm going to start by just getting you familiar with the assignment. So you have the assignment sheet already, and I trust that you've already read it. If you haven't, that is within the module. You can click on it and download the PD or the Word document, or it's in our course files as well, so you can find it in there. But I'm going to kind of go through it briefly with you to talk it out before you get going. So to begin with, what is the purpose? Whether it's telling users how to run a piece of computer software, training a new colleague in how to operate a machine, or helping fellow scientists across the globe replicate your experiment, clear and easy to follow instructions are key to technical communication. So your task here is that you're going to create an instruction set for one specific technical process for a technical program, machinery, or scientific equipment that you're familiar with. So keep that in mind. This is something that you want to be familiar with and already know how to do. Your topic should fit into the following format: how to perform X process using X device. Doesn't matter what the technical device is. It could be CAD software, Photoshop, a Bunsen burner, or a tire gauge. All that matters is that you're explaining how to do a process that uses some kind of technical device. Now, you'll notice that within this unit, I have provided a few different student samples. So you can take a look at those, and we will take a look at those so you can see the kind of range of processes that people have decided to cover. Now, this doesn't necessarily need to be something that is that technical. People have demonstrated how to cook using an oven. So there is a range of ways that you can approach this, so feel free to be creative with it. So going back to that, the process need not be hyper complex. In fact, you should assume that you're introducing someone that doesn't have much background knowledge to your process, so it's going to be in simple, clear steps. I should be able to understand the process no matter what it is, no matter how familiar or unfamiliar I am with it. And good projects for this assignment often explain a process that you've learned in another class as if you were explaining them to a younger student who's going to take the class in the future. So to make your instruction set, you also want to use all the resources at your command. So images, screen captures, videos, use anything you can to help make a very helpful, informative, effective instruction set. I'm also going to be providing YouTube videos that will kind of be how-tos on how to use these different technologies. So one key component to this is testing it. Before you submit your instruction set, you're going to test them in two ways. One, you're going to walk through them to see how well your instruction set reads. And two, and this is the most important, is you're going to watch someone else walk through the technology, through the instruction set. I would strongly suggest doing the second one twice, once before and once after. The before you're going to use to actually do an analysis of how you're going to make changes to make the instruction set more user-centered. So this is going to be a little bit of a precursor and a setup for the usability test, which we'll be doing testing in more depth. You're also going to need user data. So in addition to the instruction set, you're going to turn in a user persona, which you can find out more about at the links provided below, right here. And I provided some samples for you so you can look over how user personas might be crafted. You're also going to need to give me proof of data collected. So I want quotes, photos, etc. This says from a subject matter expert. Please ignore that. You're actually going to use it from the person that you test. So I want to see proof and get a little bit of analysis, which will be part of an assignment later on. to see that you have tested and what you found from your testing. So you're going to use that proof in your design justification to explain to me how you collected and incorporated user data, how you chose to design your document and why, and anything that you struggled with. So it will be a short mini essay that just kind of explains to me why you designed it the way you did, using your testing and also the struggles that you had within that to kind of explain your process and the decisions that you made. So as far as the layout goes, the instruction set should just follow the basic outline in Anderson, which is introduction and background, list of materials, list of steps and sub-steps, troubleshooting tips, and glossary of key terms. Your deliverable is going to be one PDF version of the instruction set. Of course, you're also going to have those smaller sub-assignments, which is the user persona and the short analysis. Some key points when crafting technical documents. Remember, the focus of this class is user-centeredness. So you need to think about the users. First of all, there's a difference between a user and an audience. I want you to think about that as you go through. Users are not just, they're listening. You're not persuading them. You're actually showing them how to move through a process. So you need to think about who the users are. You need to think about what skills they have, their background knowledge, and their demographics. These are all going to affect the way that you write your instruction set and what you might need to provide for it. And you also need to think about how you might find out more about your users and why you might want to, how that can be helpful. You need to think about users' goals, their primary, secondary, and tertiary goals. And then how you can help different types of users achieve their goals differently. So your users are not going to be one homogeneous group. They're not all going to be the same age, with the same background and the same knowledge, and even speaking the same language. And so these are things that you need to think about when you make instruction sets. You shouldn't be making them for one type of person. You should try to keep in mind the several different types of users that are going to be using the instruction set and how you can address them and help them. You also need to think of stakeholders. So beyond the users, who else has a stake in you being successful at the document you're creating? So that would be the client, right? The company that you work for. So as you create these technical documents, you have to think that you're kind of working for two different people: the users and also the client whose product that you're helping, or who has stake in you being effective at showing how to use a device or do something. Then you also should always have key performance indicators. So before you start creating a document, you should set key performance indicators that will show that you've been successful at your work and also show the client when you're finished. So you need to have these kind of benchmarks or checkpoints that show that you are successfully executing what you need to do, and let the client know when you have successfully completed the task. And finally, you need to do textual tests. So how can you test that a document makes sense and is useful? You need to be able to give this to users or pretend users and have them walk through it to make sure that the document does make sense. We can walk through documents constantly. If we already know what we're doing, we might not be the best gauge. So it's always better to have one or several different people walking through a document as well to see areas that might be confusing or not as effective. So again, the formal parts of the instruction set are going to be the intro and background. So what will these instruction sets help me do? Is there anything I need to know to be able to use the instruction set effectively? And include the subject, purpose of procedure, intended readers, the scope, organization, conventions, motivation, and safety. So Anderson's reading is going to help you, so please refer back to that as you're crafting the intro and background. This seems to be a very meaty part of the instruction set assignment. but it's really kind of creating context for users and situating readers and users and what's going on. You're going to need that list of materials, of course. So are there special things to pay attention to collect while performing the experiment? Where will your user gather the materials? Are there tools that the user needs? And what does the user or let the user know what those tools look like. So basically, you need to be sure that you have this list of everything that will be needed from beginning to end so the user can have those gathered up, and then they know that they're there and they know exactly what they are and what they look like, so they're not using the wrong tool. A list of steps and sub-steps. So once all the materials are gathered up, what do we do next? These should be written for scanning, so they should be scannable, should be rapid comprehension, action-oriented. And there should be branching steps clearly represented. So when it moves from steps to sub-steps, that should be clear. And notes on what might go wrong. So you need to be able to kind of make predictions on what could go wrong, which also comes to troubleshooting. So if something isn't working correctly, how do you fix it? You need to be able to predict what could go wrong or where users might run into glitches, and also have solutions for them. And finally, the glossary of key terms. So any key terms that the user might need to know but won't know, there needs to be a glossary for that. You may also provide websites or other sources that might be useful in going through the process. So the steps to writing the instructions: first, users. You need to consider who they are, what their goals are, and your KPIs. You're going to do this as you make a user persona. That's going to force you to do that. You need to pre-write. So jot down in just a sloppy brainstorming kind of way the steps that you think that should occur off the top of your head. Then you're going to do a process analysis. So you're going to use those steps and perform it yourself and add that to your notes so you can move on and create a more thorough and detailed instruction set. You'll get more detailed into the instructions, thinking of the small details about how you might want to group steps and sub-steps. At this point, you're going to start taking that brainstorm or that pre-write and fleshing it out and making it a more coherent document using a visual hierarchy. We talked about this for our resumes. We use that visual hierarchy with numbers, bullets, headings, vectors. You're going to add visuals that kind of document the particularly tricky steps. So if it's going to be a tricky step that's hard to explain with words, you can use visuals in that. You need to label inner working pieces, break down parts, and summarize data or steps. And then create the other parts of the document surrounding the actual instruction list. Finally, you're going to test the instructions by having someone who hasn't done the process follow them, make notes, and you'll revise accordingly. So visuals. Visuals are serve several purposes in technical manuals. They illustrate complex processes. It shows how it looks and how it's constructed, how it works. So visual learners, this is very helpful for. They provide visual summaries. So you think of like infographics that highlight key information, and they break up blocks of text because blocks of text can be overwhelming and can also start to get confusing for users. So formatting visuals. All visuals need to have a figure, number, or table title. You'll notice in this one, there's figure 1, and it has a description of what this is. It needs to have a caption, so don't just show a picture. You need to explain what is going on and using a specific caption and some labels. So right here, it says what's going on. The light gray color indicates ferrite, and the dark gray indicates cementite. I should use words that I'm more familiar with when I provide examples. Anyway, and there should be an in-text reference. So no visual should just be free-floating or existing on its own. It should be referenced within the actual text of the instructions. So finally, you can go and check out the website that I have here on how to build a paper balloon, and look to see what is effective and ineffective in that. And also it's a sample for you of an instruction set. And here's another very simple sample of an instruction set, a recipe. I want you all to look at that and think about why this is not an effective instruction set. And as you think about that, I want you to keep that in mind as you start to draft your own instruction sets and work towards the final product of the assignment.